Glad you remembered. I would have forgotten.
It's good for people to hear that message so they don't get surprised by being in the cloud.
Yeah.
All right, we might be able to just get going. And it's 5:33. So if people join, they can we can reorient if we need to, if we get a large number of people joining at once. But thank you so much for those of you that are here tonight. It's such a beautiful day too. So we appreciate you being here. So this is an informal workshop to get input on some new design review standards that we're proposing to the Planning Commission. And this is really related to raising homes within our floodplain area and streamlining our design review process. So this has been underway for a little bit of time, but we did some engagement work with our shoreline adaptation, our 2 workshops that we had over the last month. And this issue came up in the last one about just not having a lot of good information on what it takes to raise your home out of the floodplain and what is the town doing to help streamline the process. And this is one component of it, is to help streamline the design review piece. And so we wanted to have an informal workshop just to talk about what's being proposed and then what the schedule is for this piece of the project. So that's what's on the agenda for tonight. We are hoping to just stick to the design review components. We don't have our building official on or our climate adaptation team. So this is really about how do we help streamline the design review for raising your home in the floodplain. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tracy and Phil for a quick presentation, and then we'll do some questions and answers after that.
Great. Well, welcome everyone. Well, Tracy's getting the slides up. I introduce myself, Phil Boyle, Senior Planner with the town. Great to see some familiar faces again. Looks like I've got one person in the waiting room. I don't know if you could see that, Amy. Then.
Yep, I just admitted them.
Okay, good enough. Mine's delayed. So yeah, Tracy and I are going to go through a brief presentation on review and discussion of potential amendments to our design review regulations for FEMA lifts. And yes, this has been brought up many times. We've been going through the design review regulations of the zoning code for quite a while. And this has come up a number of times. Or how do we, how do we support folks in raising their homes, but also being cognizant of the neighbors and the neighborhood, so there aren't impacts to them when their homes are raised. So that's what we've come up with, some guidelines on how you can do that, how you can raise your home and have some minimal changes to it and bypass the design review process altogether. That's the overall goal. So background, as you can see, we've been doing this for a while. Started back in 2019. The council had a discussion about design review thresholds. And then we began in the fall of 22, having workshops with the Planning Commission to discuss amendments to design review regulations. Continued those in the spring and summer of 23. Had additional workshops dealing with a whole variety of things, from decks and fences and retaining walls and all kinds of stuff. We had a special workshop similar to this where we focused on the folks from Christmas Tree Hill, and we sat down with them via Zoom and also live and asked them, what's working for you for design review, and are the differences for the Christmas Tree Hill and the Flatlands appropriate, or shall we change some of those? And so this is a very similar workshop in that we're focusing on the folks in the flood zone, and we want to hear from you and get your feedback. So, and the purpose of our meeting is, again, we got general agreement from the planning commission that they want us to move forward with streamlining what we call FEMA lifts, or when the finished floor of your home is being raised up above a foot above the base flood elevation. And the base flood elevation is the height of the water, the elevation of the water, not the depth of the water, but the elevation of the water at the 100-year storm, which is more accurately the storm that has a 1% chance of occurring at any given time. No formal action is going to be taken at this meeting. Following this meeting, we'll meet with Planning Commission again, and getting close to wrapping up the variety of different design review regulations that we're proposing, including these for FEMA lifts. And then these changes will eventually go to the town council for their final approval. So design review, as probably most of you know, is basically a process that one goes through with the planning department if your project is of a significant size where the town has determined this may impact a neighbor's natural light, their view, their privacy, or may impact the look of the neighborhood. So if you have a very small project, you're not going through design review, you're just going right for a building permit. There's two levels of design review. There's staff level, which is more or less anything under 2,000 square feet of an addition, a variety of other parameters. But so the staff level means your project is being noticed to the neighbors, and they have a chance to contact staff and interact with the applicant. And then eventually staff will make the determine whether the project is approved or not approved. The next level is design review for a larger project. Very common one is a single story home becoming a two-story home with a second story addition. And those design review projects go before the planning commission. All right, so currently, if you want to come in and just lift your home, and that's all you want to do, you're going to need to go through the design review process if the maximum height of your home is 15 feet or greater. So if you've got a 13-foot home today and you're going to raise it 3 feet, you're going to be at 16, you're going to go through design review, and you're going to go through that process. And that would be a staff level. And as we say, most currently applies to most FEMA lifts are going through design review. This is all prior to a building permit, and design review, at a minimum takes 3 to 4 months. Seems like a little bit long. I would say at a minimum, maybe 2 to 3. And the minimum cost is $412. And it also introduces a level of uncertainty and possible delay in someone's project, because again, you're dealing with neighbors and you're having a public notice, so certain unknowns are introduced. This is our special flood hazard area, which covers a good portion of the town. Certainly the whole bay, almost the whole or majority of the bayside until you start climbing up Madera del Presidio, and floodplain reaches all the way up to our current town hall. And this is a simulation of what the water could look like. And this is I believe this is a king tide at a 20-year storm. So that's what and this is another vision or image of the same thing. So this didn't actually happen, but this is what may happen according to the model And these are actual photos of king tide events from the past. And same thing there, as you can see, water's coming up pretty high into these folks' backyards, probably some of your backyards who are on the call tonight. So our proposed design review regulations, I forget, is this still me, Tracy, or you? I think it's still me, huh? Our-
Yeah.
Our proposed design review, so criteria, or the thresholds. So I told you what before it was, going up above 15 feet. What we propose to ease that burden, you can do a project as large as raising your home to a maximum of 22 feet or less. And as long as you're raising your finished floor to no more than 3 feet above that base flood elevation. Okay, so the base flood elevation is 10 currently, and so if you raise it up to 13, then you're not going through design review.
And just to add to that, what's required by Corte Madera when you're raising your home is you need to go 1 foot above base flood elevation.
Right,
At
thank you.
211 feet with the finished floor elevation.
Right.
And some people are looking to go higher than that. And so that's why, as part of our proposed regulations, we will allow people to still be exempt from design review if they're going even higher than 1 foot up to the 13 in finished floor elevation.
Right.
Without.
And we also, and so those are the first two. The third one is, so you need to fall below all of these, all A, B, and C, all 3 criteria. We recognize that almost any time people are doing these, they're certainly remodeling, they're most likely remodeling part of their house. They're putting in a new kitchen, perhaps a whole variety of different things, but not super common. Certainly has happened, not very common that someone goes through all the time and money to just raise their house and doesn't touch anything else, but you can certainly do that, and it has happened. So we recognize that because you're into a construction project, people want to add another bathroom, add another bedroom, add something. So we've said, as long as your addition is 250 square feet or less, and that addition doesn't jump up, isn't higher than the rest of the house, isn't taller than the rest of the house, then you also don't have to go through design review. So maximum height of 22, 3 feet above base flood elevation, and maximum addition of 250 are your.
I just want to jump in there again.
Yeah.
Phil, that some of you might wonder, where did we come up with that number 250? And anywhere in Corte Madera, if you add 250 square feet or less of floor area, you do not need design review for that. You just go straight to building permit. So that's where that number 250 that we would allow, 250 or less on FEMA lift project, in addition to the lift, is for that reason, that if you didn't raise it, it wouldn't need design review.
Yep. Thank you, Tracy. So here's an example of, this is a 250 square foot bedroom. So you could, if you wanted to raise this house and you want to put in another bedroom, an office, or whatever it might be, that's give you a sense of the size of what you can add without going through design review, without notifying the neighbors through the formal process. We'd always encourage people to notify their neighbors no matter what they're doing, but it wouldn't be required if you're adding this bedroom. So here are examples of FEMA lifts that have occurred in 2016. And
Since 2016, yeah.
yeah, addresses on the left. And then the next column moving left to right is the amount they raised the finished floor. So they're when they walk in the front door, you step on the threshold when in 219 Golden Hind. Now, when you walk in that front door, you're 2 feet higher off the ground than you were before they started this project. So that's the raising of the finished floor. Then the next column is the related to the FEMA requirement. So like Tracy said, our base flood elevation is 10. FEMA says you've got to go to at least 11. Some people stop right at 11. Some people go as high as 13 and a half. Whatever depending on what they want to do. So then the next 2 columns are the height before they started, the top of the building before they started, and the top of the building when they were done. So if you're green and you get a no, that means you're with our new regulations, all of those folks that says no do not need to go through design review. So of these, this is 12, maybe 12 projects, 7 or probably more like 15 projects, 7 of them or so would not have to go through design review if these new regulations existed back in the day, but because these didn't, all those folks in green went through design review. So that just gives you a sense of how many we're basically affecting, about half of all the projects that took place that were FEMA lifts. And they didn't also do anything else that would require a design review. But just the FEMA lift part, we would have relieved half of these folks from that process.
Well,
Is that clear?
is what includes projects that, for example, they lifted the house, but they also had a 2nd-story addition. And that's why you see 6 yeses at the bottom of this list, is because those folks had 700 square foot in additions or 2nd-story additions that otherwise required a design review process. Irrespective of whether or not they're lifting it, they would still need design review at the bottom. And contrary to what Phil was saying about the top of the list, which are some of them may have remodeled their homes, but there was nothing else that needed design review at the top of the list besides raising.
Yeah. And next we have some visual examples of folks in your neighborhood, perhaps, projects that have been completed, obviously. So 283 Golden Hind, they raised it 4 feet above it was at 9, and they raised it up to 13, 13.6. Existing height was 20. The new height was 24. So they would have or even with our new rules, even with the new rules, this project would require design review because they're lifting it over 3 feet over the BFE. They raised it 4 feet. And then next, 70 Mohawk, very completely different side of town, would also would be required with our new regulations, would still be required to go through design review because they're adding 700 square feet, which is more than 250. But height wise, they were fine. Back over on the east side, 251 Golden Hind. This would not require design review if they came in if our new rules were adopted because they meet all the requirements. They're only raising it 2 feet. 2 feet. They're not adding 250 square feet or more, and the new height is below 22 at 19 or about 20. So this would not require design review. And same with 29 Golden Hind. again, they meet all the requirements. So these folks, you know, they would, their project hopefully would be significantly quicker and less expensive. And one could argue that hopefully this is not, you know, the change from original to completed is not a significant impact on the visual character of the neighborhood or privacy, natural light, or view to adjacent neighbors. And I think this goes over to Tracy.
Taking over. So as part of these proposed regulations, we've added some objective standards that would be required in certain instances when a project is exempt from the design review process. And one of those proposed regulations is related to any sort of foundation wall that is visible from the public way, from the street. Some of those photos you saw, a couple of them have a pretty large foundation wall that's left after the raise is done. And in cases where that exposed foundation wall is 3 feet in height or more, then the applicant would pick from sort of a menu of options on how to screen or otherwise treat the mass of that wall. And the first one is that they would include a change in material on the foundation wall. So they'd go from siding to stucco or brick or stone at the bottom wainscot of the building. Or the second choice would be to carry your finished material or stucco down the facade of the foundation, leaving obviously the required distance from the dirt at the bottom per the building code, but to cover that foundation wall. The third choice would be the installation of landscaping to screen the foundation wall. And the fourth choice is similar to that in adding a landscape planter along the wall, and both require the installation of fire safe marin vegetation. And I'll show you a couple of photos of what I'm talking about. This is just a front elevation of somebody who is raising their house, and it's going up quite a bit, and you can see this big piece of foundation here that's left. And this is an example of something we would say, okay, that's greater than 3 feet. And so pick from your menu, which one of these things are you going to apply? And we would do this through the building permit process. That would be part of the plan review comments from the planning department, just like we check setbacks and lot coverage and those things. We would check something like this and tell them to pick from our proposed menu. This is showing, I talked about a planter box. This is a front elevation showing someone who's added that feature to screen the lifted area of the house. This is an example of someone who's chosen to cover the foundation with their exterior material, stucco, leaving the appropriate space at the bottom for the building code.
So just to chime in on that one. So, you know, the right side of the building obviously is one continuous thing, one continuous cover, one continuous surface, but it's not that, like Tracy said, that foundation, which is probably, you know, 2 feet tall, maybe more, is not just bare concrete. It is covered with stucco, so you have more of a uniform look. And we can show, I think we have examples of ones that aren't quite as attractive, in our opinion.
And one final objective standard that we came up with is related to our experience when these buildings go up. They go up in the side yard elevations facing the neighbor. All of a sudden, all of your windows are above a fence in many cases. And are there opportunities to increase fence height in Corte Madera? Yes. But beyond that, if someone's installing new window openings as part of this project, then we'd want to see those new window openings be clear story windows, and this is what clear story looks like. It's the windows that have a very high sill height. And the reason for that is to protect the privacy of the neighbor. Those windows are going to be, those new openings are going to be showing up above a fence in many cases, and so we feel this requirement is a good way to ensure that there are not significant privacy impacts when people raise their homes in the flood zone. Now, we have some additional photos and discussion materials if anybody wants some more examples of homes that have been lifted. We took a bunch of photos and can share those, but we would appreciate if anybody has any questions or comments or wants us to go back or explain anything better, to please let us know your thoughts and your questions. And there's a chat, you can use that, or you can just feel free to unmute yourself.
And before you do that, just want to note that these are proposed and they're part of a larger package that's going to our planning commission on April 23rd. Do I have that date right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Good.
April 23rd. And then, so we have a couple planning commissioners on tonight. So that, and a couple flood board members as well, and a council member. So thank you all for being here. And so on the 23rd or a meeting thereafter, we'd hope to get a planning commission recommendation, and then this would go to the city council, or sorry, the town council, primarily because this is a change to our municipal code. So that does require a recommendation from our planning commission and then an approval by the town council. So that's the process that this would go through. So this is kind of an extra opportunity to provide input before this goes to the formal public review process. All right, let's see. Does anyone have any questions? Otherwise, I've got one question in the chat.
I'm going to post the answer to that in the chat and we can read it out whenever anybody's ready.
All right, sounds good. Bob, did you have a question?
I do.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, James.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just had a question about, I love the objective standards. The one question I would have is the openings, on the side, if a homeowner is replacing their windows in kind, are they allowed to keep the window size the same? You know, if they're just upgrading their windows and not moving them?
Yes.
As correct.
Great.
Our,
Okay.
our
We're just
intention.
talking
if
about
you're adding-
new fenestrations being clear story. Okay.
Correct.
Great. Great job. And I couldn't say more about trying to streamline this process for people that are trying to protect their homes against the floods. Thank you very much. Putting the work in.
Thank you, Bob. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is great. I remember hearing about this when I was on the planning commission and thinking this was great because I had talked to a number of people raising their homes, and this was a source of great frustration. So I think the neighbors that are going to do this going forward will be very happy with this. I guess I wanted to ask about a couple of things. One, the clear story windows. If the neighbor, has arrangement to put some fencing up, or they're planning on raising their house or have raised it already, and there's an agreement, would that be okay to go with a standard window or any other window, as long as the neighbor that potentially would be impacted had no issue with it?
We have a similar language included in our ADU ordinance where we require, for privacy reasons, clear story windows within 15 feet of a property line, or regular windows with permission of the contiguous with the adjacent property owner / design review. So a person could pick, I want design review for a regular window, or they could pick, I want the neighbor permission. And that's something, thank you for that feedback. And I think we'll definitely take that into consideration. And we do that with a couple of sections of our code already, the neighbor permission part, Bob.
Okay, and the other question was, several people have done concrete foundations to raise their house. I think that's more expensive, but it would allow you to landscape with soil, up to a much higher level, so that the aesthetics of the curb appeal, I think, are greatly improved, especially if, you do some planting along with that. And also may decrease the number of steps that you have to go up. I think a number of people that had raised their houses and not taken advantage or not tried to get some additional square footage out there in the past, some of those don't really look that good, and having that extra 250 square foot to do something with a front porch or steps, I think is much better, gives a much better look than just narrow steps going up to a small porch and into the house. So I applaud all of the things that were being done, and I'm really pleased we're going forward with this. I support it.
Great.
Great.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Sorry, did you all want to respond before I move to the next one? Did you? You good?
No.
Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure. Sandy, you had a
Hey,
question?
yeah, thank you. And I really appreciate you guys addressing this. As I'm on Golden Hind. I was in one of your pictures, and we're trying to do whatever we can to keep the water out and keep more drastic changes to the neighborhood by protecting the waterfront here. So I am just starting the process of interviewing contractors and what have you to raise my house and do a very small addition. One of the is the initial process for the elevation, from what I understand, to get an elevation certificate. And or can you let me know what that is, to deem what your current elevation is, and then give that to your contractor to work with to get to the desired elevation? How do we determine what we're at?
Normally, a surveyor is engaged for any project that raises the finished floor of a home, because you have at the end result, you have your elevation certificate that you submit to the town and FEMA showing what the new finished floor is at. Oftentimes I'm told that can affect your flood insurance. But before you start the project, you have to know how high you go. So a surveyor your team surveyor will come and do topo or spot elevations and figure out where is your existing finished floor. And from that's your drawings, your plans are based upon that. And I believe Public Works also requires a mid-construction verification that you're actually constructing it at the right height. The concrete or the cripple wall was built at the right height before you carry on with your project. And asking your neighbors too that have done it already. Oftentimes they have someone to suggest that you go to for that purpose.
Two other quick questions. The 250 square foot limitation. I was just kind of reacting to Bob's comment. Would a porch on the front, would an extension of a porch on the front yard be part of that? Or would that be like adding a deck, which shouldn't affect square footage?
A front porch is floor area except for 40 square feet. And most are relatively modest in size. We're seeing not only throughout Corte Madera, but really the biggest one I think we've seen with the FEMA lift we showed on screen at 70 Mohawk, which is still pretty modest. So as part of your additions, yes, the front porch would count as some of that floor area.
Okay.
But I think you'd most likely be able to design around that and have plenty of leftover for others areas of the home to add.
Yeah, I'm gonna be adding a very small office, so that it is something I need to think about. Final question, since I'm starting this right now, how soon could this possibly pass? Because obviously I want to plan accordingly. If this goes to the town council, when could this potentially actually be green lighted?
So if we're going to planning commission in late April, and we hope that we get a recommendation within one meeting, but it may be two. So then we'd be looking at moving forward to the town council perhaps in June.
Mhm.
And then it depends on how many meetings the town council would take to review that. And if they approve it, then it would go in for a second reading. So we're looking at July at that point, and then it's actually in effect about a month after that. So I'd say end of summer that these would go into effect if everything goes as planned, and that's a pretty conservative time frame.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mhm. All right, there's no one else that has their
I
hand
don't
raised.
have my hand up. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so I don't have the hand on the screen. So anyway, this is Roy. Two clarifications. So the planter for out front and the one photo that was shown that didn't have a planter over to the right-hand side, it had an under-house vent. If the planters are required and they block the under-house vent, what's the homeowner to do?
Thanks, Roy. The planters aren't required. They're just one of 4 options for a homeowner to choose from. So they would then decide maybe planter's not for me. I'm just going to do vegetation on the ground. Or I'm just going to have a change in material, which your vents are then installed. You punch your vents through that siding or stucco or what have you. So they would be able to choose something else if it wasn't feasible to have the planter in a certain location.
Okay, great. Okay, the next question is related to raising the house. It seemed like it was a little bit complex. Is the base or the BFE, is it 10 feet or 11 feet now? I thought it went to 11 feet some time ago.
It's 10. It went from 9 to 10 in 2016. And then when you raise the finished floor of a home to comply with FEMA requirements and Corps of Engineers requirements, you have to go to a minimum of 11 BFE. So 1
Okay.
foot above base flood.
Okay, got it. So if somebody wants to, because we had a discussion, raising the house 3 feet, if the house is 9 feet 8 inches at the first floor, the surveyor comes in and says, okay, your first floor is at 9 feet 8 inches. A minimum,
Mhm.
we'd have to raise the house to 11 feet. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you want to raise it 3 feet above 11 feet, can you do it with this ordinance? Or if I'm at 9 feet 8 inches, can I only go to 12 feet 8 inches rather than 14?
You can go to 13 with this ordinance. And it's not to say you can't go to 14. It's just that's when we would say, well, you're not exempt from design review at that
Okay.
point. So you can go to 13. So that's 3 feet above base flood elevation. And we could show you that chart about most people are going 11, 11 and a half. We have 3 that went over 12 and 1 that went to 13 and a half.
Okay, yeah. This proposal makes absolute sense.
Great.
So we have a few questions in the chat too. One, Tracy, I think Susie emailed you directly or messaged you directly, but it was about vegetation.
Yep.
Do you have her original question?
I do. She was asking about hardscape requirements from the fire department. And we did vet this standard through the fire code official who provided us the language that we used. And in non-WUI areas, which is almost all of our flood zone, he added that planted areas must be non-combustible materials, meaning any planter, box, or what have you. Irrigated, planted with fire-safe marine, fire-smart vegetation, or as approved by the fire code official and without combustible mulch.
Thanks. And then Meg had a few questions in here too, and it looks like maybe some people aren't able to raise their hands, and that's no problem. You can feel free to unmute. It's pretty casual. But the question here was, what about raising the first level a full story of 6 to 8 feet, since only 4 looks odd? So I think you kind of covered that. And then they go on to say, can we raise over 4 feet and assume that it will go through design review? So yeah,
Correct. Correct.
So
Right.
my question is, I guess, is there a limit as to the first floor, how high you can raise it? Because aesthetically, it would look better if it's a whole full floor, right? So it would look like it was 2 stories, but that's
Right.
obviously going to go through design review. Has there been a
Yes.
limit set on how high you can go? Can you
Right now,
go
there's a 30-foot height limit in Corte Madera. We've written this code exemption, if you will, for raising your home, to have a maximum height of 22 feet. And that just means that if you're no higher than 22 feet after you lift your home, then you're exempt. If you're higher than that, you want to lift it higher and you're going to be taller, or you have a 2-story home you're lifting, then you need design review. So you could do it, but you would go through design review at that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I guess you're basically saying that anything really above, I mean, ignoring the base value, because most of us are at sea level. Let's say anything, it sounds like over 4 feet for that first level is going to go through a design review. Is that correct? Basically. If you don't do a full story, if you do something, because like I said, I think aesthetically anything under a full story looks odd. So if you go anything below that, you're going to go for, or anything above that, you're going to go through a design review, it sounds like.
We haven't seen people doing that, probably
Yeah.
because really created a whole story that is for your garage, because that couldn't be conditioned space. So we haven't seen that quite yet. And the parameter that we're using for whether or not you need design review does not really involve the amount, really, that you're raising it, right? You rip it off the existing foundation and you raise it up. So some people only need to go a foot. Some people need to go 4 feet. That's not what we're looking at. We're looking at how high is the finished floor elevation going to be above base flood. So you have base flood at 10, you need to go 11, and we're going to let you go an additional 2 to 13. So that could mean somebody raises their house 4 or 5 feet. And as long as they're no more than 13 finished floor elevation and no more than 22 feet in height, they would still be exempt. So the amount that you raise it is a little bit more flexible, I would say, or a little bit more site specific.
And the 22-foot exemption, just remind me, what is it currently?
The 20,
There-
well, 22, well, currently it's
20?
I guess you could say it's 15,
Oh,
because any less than 15, but most houses, and especially the east side and northern Madera Gardens, are 16 to 18 feet in height to begin with. And so raising them is obviously triggering design review in most cases. But right
Okay.
now, it's not just FEMA lifts, it's any sort of addition. If you have a 2-story home and you're sticking a laundry room on the top level and it's 20 feet in the air, you need design review. So the 15-foot is an existing threshold for design review for single family zoning districts in Corte Madera.
And so you're saying the garage is part of the first floor, or it's not considered, because you said something about the garage being a factor. But I mean, if you raise the whole first story, obviously
Right.
you have room for a garage. I mean, you have room for a car to go under there. So are you saying that
Yeah.
that is, you're counting that as the base level or not?
No, I was just saying that I think that's why we're not seeing people raise it a whole story, is because that creates an awful lot. That's an awfully large project with not a lot of use for that lower level, other than really parking or storage, or it could be
Basically
occupied.
making a 2-story house. Which would go to
It,
design
it's
review.
it's not a true story house, but you would still get the benefit of being able to do, additional remodel on the house in the future, because now you've done the FEMA lift, right? You might not get it in the first round, but in the future you could still do additional modifications on the house, because right now you restrict additions to the house if you don't do a FEMA lift.
I think
Well-
there's a threshold,
Yeah.
but not a restriction.
Right. But I mean, most people hit that dollar threshold. So, okay.
Well,
I think you've answered my question. I think we're good. Thanks.
All right, Bob, did you have something else that you wanted to say?
Just going to follow on Meg's comment. I think the overall goal of what you're doing is to make it easier for people to lift their houses and all make it So you can make it look right from the street. You can really have the approach going up to the front door, not like a long set of stairs going up. I would think that it really would not make any sense to do what Meg is suggesting and raise it up to a greater extent and try to use that for storage underneath it, because that's going to be susceptible to flooding. So that, might have objection to doing that from the way the aesthetics of it look, unless you have some grand design plan that's going to make it look right. But I'm having a hard time envisioning that looking right.
Mhm.
Okay, is there any other questions that we can talk through?
I wanted
I-
to briefly address Sandy's question about the elevation. When I didn't raise my house, but I had surveyors come out, and there was a 3-step process. So you have the initial elevation of your property done, and all this is very costly now. And then when you're having the contractor build the house, like I'll just say in the middle of the project, there's another elevation taken to make sure that the contractor has set the elevation of the first floor correctly. And then you have the final elevation where you get a certificate for FEMA. So, and all those 3 stages cost you money.
Oh, thank you very much for that.
And just to let everyone know, we did meet with Roy yesterday, and based on some of his comments and our conversation, we do plan to put together some information on just what does it take to raise your home? What does the process look like? Not just the planning process, but the building side. What kind of contractor do you need? What kind of soil testing do you need? And so we'll provide hopefully some good information to lead people along what path you have to be on. So this is obviously just one component of that, but we're gonna, if you have ideas on how, other ideas on how we can help, let us know.
What is the first step in permitting the process, other than hiring my people? What is the first step with the town that I would have to do?
First step would be to come in and talk with us and show us whatever you have in drawings or
Yeah.
or written description, and so we can kind of walk through and make sure you're aware of the process you're going to need to go through, whether you need planning, entitlement, or whether you're under these thresholds, and whether you just need to go to a building permit. So that would be my recommendation, and come in with your design professional if you already have that person on board.
Great, thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments?
Yeah, hello, this is David.
Hi, David.
Hi, okay, here we go. So just a cautionary tale, from the restoration hardware to the climate adaptation plan, citizens have always critiqued your efforts to engage the public. I'm looking at your website, says engaging with the residents is crucial for gathering input. As you can see from the attendance here, the announcement of this meeting just came out on Thursday. So just a cautionary table, get this information out, please, sooner.
Great, thanks, David. All right. Well,
Are you
that
able,
can,
are you going to be putting a copy of the slides on the website for us to download?
Yes,
The-
do that. Yeah, we'll do that tonight.
Terrific.
great. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. And thanks, Phil and Tracy, for the presentation and the work on this. And so the next step will be our Planning Commission meeting on April 23rd. So you're welcome to join us. I know the 2 planning commissioners on will be joining us. And so we'll look forward to that. So thanks again for joining tonight. Have a great evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Our contact information's at the end of the slide deck online if you're seeking out additional questions. let us know.
All right.